Hello, everyone. I got to turn that box off my screen. There we go. It's so nice to see all the bright smiling faces, little squares. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I know it is the busy mid-end of summertime, and I appreciate you taking some of your time out of your busy day to do a little painting. This is going to be a fun and easy class. If you have children or grandchildren and you want to share this project with them, it is definitely appropriate. And we're going to make a bunch of little, I almost call them like tester feathers or swatch feathers. It's a fun way to get to know your new materials. And I get questions all the time, Lindsay, I've got some metallic paints or I've got some new watercolors. I don't know what I should really do with them. I have no ideas. This is a wonderful project for that because you're going to make all these beautiful little feathers that you can use in other projects. They make beautiful bookmarks. You can punch little holes in them and use string or fishing line to hang them from branches to make pretty mobiles or decorations for your windows. So it's just kind of fun. It's just a fun project that you can do, and it gives you something to paint when you might just be feeling a little tired or uninspired, and you just want something to relax and de-stress too. So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch my camera view so you can see my table, and we're going to do some painting. Now, in the meantime, if you have any questions while we're going along, if something's not clear, you can post that in the chat. Please type the word question in all caps so that it catches Molly's eye. She's from Derwent, and she will be asking me those questions as we go along. And that way I can clear anything up for you. But I think it's going to be a fun hour, and let's get to it. All right, I've got a mess of feathers here just to show you some ideas of what we're going to do today. I've got some watercolor pencils here. These are actually the Derwent Inktense pencils. So they have a lot of pigment, and they're very slow wearing. So you get a lot of bang for your buck with these. This is the 12 set, but if you have a larger set and you want to play with more colors, by all means. To keep things simple, I have Derwent Waterbrushes here. I have the 3 rounds that they offer. And these are really handy if you have young children or if you have any strength issues such as arthritis or just difficulty on squeezing regular water brushes, because they can be kind of difficult to manage. You got a nice soft silicone button there. We've got black and white watercolor paper. If you don't have black watercolor paper, just use your white. It's fine. Metallics really pop on black. You can see this pretty peacock feather on the black. It really just pops because it catches the light, and also it gives you a lot of contrast because your metallics are opaque, so they really look pretty, where they might be a little bit more subtle on, say, a white paper. So it's kind of fun to have. The black paper I'm using, I've used a couple different kinds. This one, like for instance, this is the Stonehenge black, and this is a handmade black watercolor paper from the company Shazam. You can, it's sometimes you can find it easily, and then other times it can be a little more difficult, but the Stonehenge works really good, and you get some really nice color payoff on the Stonehenge as well. So either way, or black cardstock, thick black cardstock. Michael says that really heavyweight Recollections, I think it's 110-pound black. It's super thick. It's almost like cardboard. That would work well for this too, because you're not going to be really drenching it. I'm going to slide these out of the way. And we're going to start with white paper. And that just because it's going to be easier for you to see, but then we will move over to the black later. And actually we'll put a couple feathers on camera just so the camera can focus on it, because it's going to want to kind of do that for a few minutes. So we're going to start off by sketching a feather, and you can use whatever color you want. I think I will use deep indigo, which is a nice like navy blue color. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of draw just kind of a sweeping line. Kind of like that. That is going to represent the center barb of the feather. And then I am just going to start to draw some little whimsical kind of swirly shapes off the bottom. And then I'm just going to do some up and around like that. This is kind of a fancy feather. You don't have to be this fancy, but I want to get a fancy one right out of the way so you wouldn't be afraid of it. And if you want to take more time at it, you can. Now on a white paper, you're going to want more, color. So more of the pencil, because that's really going to give you a lot of the color payoff. And then the metallic watercolors will just give you the shimmer. On the black paper, you're going to need a lot more of the metallic paper paints, and the Inktense is just going to like almost just coat some of the metallic particles. I want to get some color in here. I'm going to do a little bit of fuchsia, I think. I'm just going to add some to one side. Don't use a lot of pressure. You'll get plenty of color payoff with very little pressure. If you want to have a really strong line, you can go back in while it's wet and draw and get those really dark lines, because you can like dent the paper a bit, but I don't recommend doing that until you're sure you want those lines. And then I think I'll also take some sea blue, which is a beautiful kind of turquoisey color, and add some of that to the other side of the feather. Okay, so that's how we're going to start our first feather. Now let's look at our watercolors here. So when you get your watercolor set, it'll be more pristine than mine looks because I've used mine quite a bit. You're going to get this little swatch card here that tells you the names and in 4 different languages, and it has a little bit of a swatch. This is handy if you're you're looking to reorder a pen color you've used up, but I really recommend that you make yourself a swatch on black and white paper. So I just taped mine together here because look how different those colors can look. Like that almost looks like a tangerine peach color on white, but it looks like a glitter gold on black. So you're going to get different looks depending on if you're using white or black. So I highly recommend this. And this is just cardstock that I swatched on. You don't need to use your fancy paper for that. You'll still get a good idea. And the other thing is, because the metallic paints are thicker, they actually will work on the unsized cardstock better than like regular watercolors would, because they're just going to sit on top and glisten. And so that's why I said if you had that heavyweight cardstock from Michaels, that would be perfect. This is just some, I don't even know, probably thin. This is thinner than the Michaels stuff. It's whatever I had to scrap of. So what you want to do when you first get your paints is you want to pre-activate them, and you can do that with a spray bottle, or you can just take your water brush and put a drop on each of these pans. Metallic paints are kind of thirsty. They will soak up that water, and that's going to help you get a good amount of paint to work from. I'm going to set my cap aside so I don't lose it. And I think I want to go with either a silver or a blue on this feather. And yeah, I think I'll start with this blue here, and you can see how easily it reactivates because I put that water on it just well, I'll show you on the palette here, because I put that water on there. I got a lot of paint just ready to go, and I'm going to add some more water to that so I have a nice kind of skim milk consistency. And now I'm going to start adding that to my flower here. My flower. Oh my gosh, it's a leaf. I mean, it's not a leaf, it's a feather. Guys, I'm out of sorts today. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way. Let me see. I think that'll be a little easier for you to see and me not have my hand in the way. Now, if you just want to have more color and less sparkle, just squeeze your brush gently and you will deposit some water. I like to have little kind of floofy feathers there. Now, as the metallic's running out on my brush, you can see I'm getting a more intense color. That's because I'm just seeing the Inktense pigments at that point. I like to use metallic paints as as kind of an accent rather than, a main course in a painting. I think they work best that way. Have we had any questions so far, Molly?
We do. There was someone doesn't have access to black paper where their location is, and she was wondering if you could paint black down and then use the metallic and the Inktense over top of it. And I know from our experience, we haven't really worked with that much, and I'm not sure how the surface would adhere to it. But Lindsay, you might have tried that a little bit more.
You could use a product called Black Watercolor Ground for that. That would work perfectly. Basically, what it would be like, it's almost like it's very pulpy, and it's like a watercolor gesso basically, but that would work. That's it's kind of pricey. So I probably just work on white paper because it's pretty on white paper too. Or if you can find a thick black cardstock, if you have access to that, I think that would probably be much more affordable, and I think it would work just as well. One thing I want to mention, if you're like kind of here and you don't have a huge area to cover, but you need more water, I just squeeze your brush over your palette so you don't end up with a big blob when you just need like a little bit to finish off a picture. You know what? The Shazam paper, it's spelled Shizen, I believe, is made in India. So there it might be available. It might just be kind of at a shop you don't frequent. I'm gonna try dripping in some of this silver color and see how that looks while it's still wet. I think I want to put in a little bit of this this metallic pink. Now the metallics they're opaque, so they will cover up other stuff that you have in there, but I think that's kind of fun. You can put some nice accent lines. And when you want to have a more detail, work on the tip of your brush like that. I'm used to using the larger Derwent brush here, but you can certainly go in with a smaller one if you're more comfortable. My advice would be, if you're looking at that set of water brushes and you're considering buying the set, or maybe just buying one or two and you're not sure if you would use a whole set, my advice would be to go with the largest size. I think they're priced either very similar or the same price, I think they're either all the same price or just very similarly a price, like not a huge difference. You'll get a lot more use out of the big one than the small one if you have to pick just one. So that would be my advice. Now, one more thing I want to do is, going back to those colors that we already used, we can go in and add some more detail. So if you want a dark color, go to the indigo color. We used that first, maybe reinforce the center barb. And then you can go in with the magenta and add some little expressive lines. Use that with a sharp pencil so you can get a fine line if you want it. And we can do some with the blue. And I just repeat the colors I've already used so I don't end up with any discordant colors. There, and we can let that one dry. We'll do another one on the white and before you move to the black. And if we have any questions, you can just pop right in with them. Let's see, this one's kind of cute. We could do that one. This one's very simple. Just don't want to get my hand in the way there. So we're going to start off with a straight line. I'm using tangerine. Kind of straighter. I like to have a little curve to it. It adds a little bit of interest. Then I'm going to kind of make it into like a cross shape and just kind of put a semicircle at the end. I'll draw this a little darker. I want you to keep your lines light, but I'll draw it a little darker so you can see it really well. It kind of looks like a fish head, like a fish bone. And then I'm going to kind of start the fluff about 3/4 of an inch from the end of the line. And then I'm just going to very lightly draw in the sides of the feather. I'm going to take a little bit of poppy red and add that very gently to the top, just so I can have a nice wash of it. Now keep in mind, you can do whatever colors you want. I'm going to add a little bit of that fuchsia here. Not much, just a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the orange in there too. but this is, I'm going for a more pale wash. And one thing that you can wipe your brush, squeeze out some water and wipe it on the sponge that's in your pan paint set, or you can swish it in water. That works really well too. And now I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze some water right there. Still a little bit of blue in my brush, but not a big deal. And I'm going to get a nice wash of color going. And this was just a really light coating of the Inktense. So if you were using a different set of watercolor pencils, you might need a little bit more than what you would use with the Inktense. That's what I said, the Inktense is such a nice value because you get a lot of color without using up a lot of product. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a little bit more water in here because I want this quite puddly. And I am going to make myself a path for paint to go. So I want to have a really kind of wet feather that I can drip colors into. And another tip is I often will start my drawing a little bit smaller than I think I want it to end up. That way I have room to grow. So if I want to add these little details, these little floofs on the edge, then I have that kind of that space to work around. And I also want to leave enough space between my feathers that I can cut them out because they're
Hey,
such fun
Lindsay,
bookmarks. Yes.
someone's asking if this is her question. So she said, because Inktense paints are opaque, can you use a black or very dark base wash to begin with on white paper, then build up the layers on top? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yes. So Inktense are permanent, which means when you paint them and you fully activate them, they do become permanent. They soak into the fibers. When you're using Inktense that thickly to get if you want to get solid black, like solid black paper, you're going to have to use several layers. And there is actually on my YouTube channel and on the Derwent website, there is a tutorial on how to get a really rich black with the Inktense pencils. And then to layer up like you're talking about. But I think if you went that dark on a watercolor paper, which is sized, which means it's got a surface coating on it that keeps your paint from feathering. I think some of it would lift up when you went to go over it because the paper is only going to absorb so much. And it's just like when you buy a new set of black sheets or a black shirt and you throw it in the wash, that first wash, some color is going to come out. I think that is liable to happen when you're putting that much down on a sized paper like watercolor paper. So I probably wouldn't recommend that. I mean, give it a try on a scrap, but I think you might end up with an issue where you can't fully dissolve and have the paper absorb that much because that's quite a bit. I hope that makes sense. All right, now I'm going to, oh, you know, it would be pretty here. Let's use that really sheer color. I'm going to show you my swatch, what I mean about a sheer color. This color right here, looks like a peach. It's so sheer and glittery. That would go really well in that. Let's drop some of that in there and let that mix around. That's like, I don't know if it shows up on camera, but I'm going to get a really good puddle of that going because that's so pretty. This is a really nice color. And another reason I recommend swatching is because you might do a painting and then wish you had like just a sheer sparkle over an area, like maybe like a dragonfly wing or something. This is a type of product you can do that with because it's going to allow your other colors underneath to show through. That mica kind of drip around. But the tutorial that uses the black to actually do the whole painting in that black Inktense pencil, and then we glaze other colors over it. If you search Grisaille, it's spelled Graislle, on my channel or the Derwent website, you'll find that tutorial, and you'll be able to follow that and see what I mean. But that area where we did pitch black, we didn't layer any color over it. All right, now I'm going to go back to the Inktense pencils. I'm going to leave that brush dirty because I might want to use some more of that. And I don't want to rinse it out and waste it. I'm going to go in with a poppy red. turning my brush as I go because it's going to dissolve that color quite a bit. So I want to keep a nice sharp edge. Any little details you want? I'm gonna go, oh, yellow would be pretty too. This is sun yellow. The set of 12 is really nice. So you can really do a lot with that. You don't have to go and get the really big set if you're, just wanting to have a nice good assortment of permanent colors, meaning colors you could use on fabric and lay and wash and layer over it. They put all the good colors in the smaller sets, which I really appreciate. Now, say you got to this point and you're like, oh, I wish I put more color in, I diluted it too much. What can I do? What you can do is you take your brush, and I like to do this over on the palette, and since I want more sparkle, I'll just leave that on there, and you just use your lead like a pan of watercolor. Try not to get the wood wet. That way you're just kind of dissolving some of the pigment there. It doesn't take much, and you've got a lot of color. Try not to get the wood wet, and just make sure you don't sharpen it until the pencil's fully dried out, because then you're going to snap that soft lead if you do that. But that's a great way to kind of have like a set of paints right there when you're limited supplies. Put some more color down.
Hey, Lindsay, someone asked if you can use metallics, the Derwent metallics, with other watercolor paints that aren't Inktense. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Use them on anything. I always encourage you to mix it up, because if you just have one supply, you just have one supply. But if you have two supplies, you don't have two supplies, you actually have three, because you have each of them on their own and then you have them together. So that's a great way to get more bang for your buck. All right, now I want to put some details on this. I want to add some little spots, and I think I'll do that with the pencils, or I could let it dry and do it with the paints as well, but I think I'll do it with the pencils. Let's see how fuchsia looks. Fuchsia looks nice and dark on there. Make each feather a little bit different each time, so feel free to experiment and have fun. Little accent lines there. And maybe I will do a few little drops of a more metallic color. So if you're going to do that, I'm actually going to go to a smaller brush so I don't get too much water. So these are the sizes there. I'll show you all three sizes. I use the biggest one the most, but I'll go to the smaller one. And what I want to do is get like a really thick pasty paint. And I think I'll do purple, because I think that will show up. But I got to make sure that I don't get too much water in there, because if this is really wet, it's just going to bleed all over the place, because that's still very wet. You can see how shiny it is. It's still very wet. So I just want to get kind of the pasty paint. So I almost want it to be like melty ice cream, like that thick. I'm going to do little dots like that. See how it's not running? It's very, very thick. And I'm going to dot over those darker lines I just put. And because it's really thick, it doesn't want to run. Plus the mica in this paint makes it not as, it makes it just kind of heavy and sit there. And that's what you want with when you're doing this, this kind of wet on wet technique where you don't want the paint to move. Right, maybe do a little bit on the, maybe I'll sharpen up the quill part here, the barb in the center. There. Right. I think I will rinse my brush off just because I do have a lot on there, and I'm going to saturate that little sponge if I keep using that. All right, so we've got two examples with the Inktense and the metallics together. Now let's go to the black paper and try some feathers. Now keep in mind there will be a replay at Michael's YouTube channel in a day or two. So if we're going kind of fast, just go at your own pace, enjoy yourself. Shouldn't feel stressful or rushed, but when you have the replay, you can always pause it. So that's a really nice thing. So if I sketch on with the Inktense here, it's going to be hard to see, but I'll try it nonetheless. But now I'm going to look at my swatches and I'm going to say, okay, what colors are the most opaque? Because those are the ones that are going to show up the best on the black. Our silver is really nice and bright. Actually, I should look at my vellum that came with a set, because I might be calling it the wrong, it might have a fancy name. Yep, that's silver. So the silver is really vibrant, really opaque. I mean, the blue and the purple are also really opaque. The red's pretty opaque. So I can kind of go with those colors when I want them to really stand out. Now I'm going to see if maybe if I sketch with yellow, this will show up here. And let's see. Yeah, I like this feather here. This will be a fun one to do. So I'll just put that on camera. Hopefully that'll show up. And you can do them, you can vary the size. Oh yeah, the yellow is going to show up just fine. Okay. I didn't expect it to show up that much. I'm going to start off with just a slightly curved barb here.
Hey, Lindsay, a couple people are asking if you could use black construction paper.
That's very soft. So when I'm saying a paper is soft or paper is hard, I'm talking about density. So construction paper is very soft and absorbent, almost like a paper towel. So I think it would actually absorb the metallic paints, and you wouldn't see much payoff because everything would be kind of trapped in the fibers. Cardstock is a tighter, more dense paper. So your paper, so the paint particles in the water is going to have a hard time permeating the surface. Even though it doesn't have a lot of sizing on it, it's still not going to be able to soak in. If you think of like a paper towel, if you brushed your paint on a paper towel, it would just go right into the fibers. Construction paper is kind of in between a paper towel and cardstock. So give it a try, but I think that it probably would absorb your paint a little bit more than you would want. And cardstock's not very expensive.
And then Lindsay, when you go to use the water brush again, a couple people were curious as to how it worked and like I think how the top comes on and just how it, like, I think it might be new for some people, so.
Absolutely. Let me just show you on this big one, because this is the one I'm going to use in a second. Oh, and I've got a trick for you too that I want to share. So if you what I do is I save these little things. I don't know if you've ever bought like the Kool-Aid or the Crystal Light or I think it's called Vio, the water bottle flavor enhancers. They're a couple dollars. Well, you can like very carefully over the sink turn it, and you can take the cap off and clean it out, and then fill that with water, and then snap the cap back on. This is perfect for refilling your water brush. So when you get a water brush, it's going to be empty and it's going to kind of look like this. So what you're going to do is you are just going to turn it the opposite way as what you would to open something. So it's like you're going righty-loosey, and you'll take off the top, which has it has like a little valve in here, so your water just doesn't run everywhere. It's got like a little bit of a sponge in there, and it's got your brush tip like that. And here it's open. So what you can do is hold it under the faucet, or I love to take these little squeeze bottles that the water flavors come in, and I give it a little squeeze, and I can fill up a water brush about 4 times with one of these. And I can keep it right in my bag when I'm traveling, when I'm wanting to paint like on an airplane or on a train or something, or on a bus or in a car. And there, so now we've got our brush filled. So to clean it, you can either take a paper towel or a sponge and just kind of squeeze out some water and flush out any color, or you can rinse it in a cup if you have one. And then when you push this little button here that says push, can you see there, like it's gonna, although you can almost see little air bubbles there because I have a little bit of air in there, but it will let me squeeze out drops of water. I think you can kind of see that on the feather. And then, so if I'm working on something very delicate, I wouldn't do that over my paper. But if I know, like I'm doing a sky or like this, where I really want to wet that, this area, I'll just squeeze it and then spread it out with my brush. But if I'm like, oh, I just need a little bit of water, I'll go to my palette, I'll give it a little squeeze, and then I'll just kind of wipe off any extra, and then I'll come over and add it where I need it to go. So that's probably the biggest thing to get used to with a water brush versus a regular paintbrush, is getting used to the color. Now, some water brushes you'll come across will continuously feed water. I haven't had that issue with the Derwent water brushes, these side push button ones. I'm not that familiar with the ones that come in the kit, because I really have come to prefer these. But sometimes you get a water brush that will constantly feed water, and you may prefer that or you may dislike it. So if you've got one of those in your collection, then just have a paper towel handy that you can occasionally blot. Um, or you might actually really like it. If you do like hand lettering, you might really love that feature. But just kind of get to know it, get to know what you have. But I haven't had an issue with these leaking at all. No, I just need a little water for this for the barb there, so I'm just going to dip it into that bit on my palette. And they're really great for travel because then you don't have to fuss with a pot of water. Or if you're working with kids, if you're a teacher and you got a classroom full of kids, it's mess free basically. And you just, I think if I'm cleaning up after a class, I would just take them all, rinse it in the water in the sink. But otherwise just squeeze out, wipe it on a paper towel. Very quick and easy. So this is nice and wet. I can tip my paper to the light. You can see it's shiny. That's how wet you want it, quite wet. If it's starting to dry out, just squeeze a little more water in there. And now we're going to add our more opaque colors. So like our green, our purple, our blue, and then we can add some gold on top because our golds are a little more sheer. That gold's a little more opaque, but when you add this, because opaque colors can turn into mud really quick, you want to not mix them all together. So you want to let them mix on this wet surface that we have here. So I'm just going to go in. And if you had an area that you didn't want any paint, like maybe you wanted to keep the barb in the center, like I did here, I didn't wet that center in there, I left it dry. That way the paint won't go in there. I forgot to do that because I was too busy gabbing. But if you want to leave an area black, just don't wet it and the paint won't go there. I'm going to go in, just throw some of this here. Now, again, like I said, these heavy mica paints are not going to flow and whoosh around like your Inktense will because they've just got more viscosity to them. But it does give you a little bit more control, which is nice. Now, if you want even more control, go with your smaller brush. And especially if you're doing those little hairy lines and you want to drag a line off the edge, that can be really handy. So I like to go and put all the, like, I'll say the purple in at once, and then I'll go in and put all the green. That way I'm not constantly washing my brush and wasting the beautiful pigments. All right. Now I'm going to go in with some of that green that's really opaque here. It's kind of like a minty color. It's just called green. I think yeah, that one's just called green. Now, if you get a big puddle, I've got a puddle there because my paper's not taped down. It kind of like dipped a little bit. You can either take a sponge or a dry brush or a piece of paper towel and just kind of sop up some of that. I think a paper towel works a little bit better. If I got too much in there, it's just gonna dilute everything. There we go. Now it's showing up because it's not getting so diluted with all the other water. I take this off my brush so I don't waste it. And now I'm going to go in with a smaller brush and add some of those little details on the edge, again with that same green. And look at how thick I'm using that. And you may think that I'm going to wear out these paints in no time. I'm going to use them all up. These are actually really slow wearing. So, use them. You bought them to use them. Use them. You're not going to waste them. There's so much there. And so anytime you're kind of stuck and you don't know how you want to, you don't know what you want to do with a new set of paints, this is just a really fun way to get to use them, get to know them. You start off with a line for the center of the feather, then you make little wispy lines that go off of them. You can come up with so many different designs. And if you did like this and you didn't leave a dry area, just go back in with a Sharpie when you're done and make that dark line. You can add so many little details when they're dry. Now I think we'll try try using the black Inktense to do that line, see how that works. I still want some other color in there. I think I think I'll do some of that gold. This gold here looks like it's our more opaque one. Oh yeah, that's nice and opaque. Hopefully that's showing up. Like sometimes you hold it to the light and it shows the color a little bit better. If you get a big gob on your brush like that, what you want to do is just try to scrape it off on your palette so you can go back in and pick it up on the tip of your brush. So that's not going to do you any good on the end in the middle of your bristles like that. And if your colors start to get contaminated, it's all right. You're just contaminating the top layer. You can just wipe it off with a wet brush later. All right, I'm going to try that black Inktense and see how intense it is over those metallic colors and if it will show up. Opaque colors tend to drown out translucent colors, so I have a feeling that those opaques are just going to gobble up this black. Yeah, it'll show up a little bit of it, but I think you just want to go in with a marker after it's dry and bring back that center line. And that's kind of how that looks wet. It'll get more opaque as it dries. I think I need a little bit more wisps over here because I've got more on that side. So I'm going to do that really quick too with my fine brush. And it may look messy and disorderly to begin with, but it's amazing how good they look when they dry and you've given your eyes a break and you've done something else for a while and you come back, you'll be surprised at how nice it looks. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's only 2:37. Let's do another one on the black paper and then we can go back, maybe do a peacock feather on the white because I want to get some of those intense colors on that. And I think that will be give us a nice variety. We'll do one kind of like one like that. I'm just saying there's like a nice shape we haven't done. Oh, this one I think would be kind of fun. So this one we've got some fluffies and some smooth, and we can leave the barb kind of undone. Oh, actually this one. Oh, let's do this one. That one's kind of different. Same idea. All right, I'm going to draw it again with a yellow, but you can always just do it with pure water. Nice curve. We're going to leave an area dry. Want a little bit of a smoother edge here. A few little wisps. I'm not going to draw too much because I don't want a bunch of yellow in there. And then we are going to, let's try the medium brush here. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a drop on there, squeeze a drop on the other side. And I am going to make sure that I don't wet the center here because the water is only going to go where the paper is wet. Prime this paper so it can spread our colors out a little bit better. I don't need that big of a shape for the center line, but I'm just making sure I can always whittle it smaller, but I just want to make sure I have enough space, enough of that black that's left dry. And again, you could do this just with clear water. You don't have to draw it with yellow, but I am just so that it's a little easier to see. Okay, let's do some different colors. Let's do some warm colors. I think I'll do this pinky red color here. Something else I recommend is to let your paints dry out completely before you put them away. So just leave your palette open for an hour or so and make sure that's nice and dry before you put them away. I've never had an issue with the Derwent brand metallics molding, but I have had metallic paints in the past get kind of mildewy if you put them away without letting them dry first. So it's a good idea with any paints, honestly, especially in human ones. I think I'll do a little bit of, let's see, I love that glittery orangey tangerine color. It's called Sunset. I think I'm going to clean my brush and add some of that. It's a little more sheer, but I think it'll be pretty. I like it because I can see it glisten, like I can see the particles moving around when I do this. That center area I'm leaving dry isn't really going to show up until not going to show up well until everything has dried, because then you'll have the contrast also of the shiny and the dull, or the shiny and the matte version. So don't worry if it's not showing up very well for you. And I'm going to switch to a smaller brush because I got some puddles there, and add some more paint but less water. What did I do with that? Right here. And let's see, maybe I'll use this red. So you use the metallics in general much more thickly than you would a traditional watercolor, or even the Inktense in a lot of cases, because they're more opaque, they're higher viscosity paint, and you're generally going for a little bit more impactful of an accent. All right, I think I want to put some spots on that one. I think I'll use actually the metallic black here. I just wiped the excess water off of my brush, and I'm gonna just try to pick up the paint with just the smallest amount of water I would need just to make it into paint consistency. So that way I don't end up, I think this is actually called pewter. No, deep graphite rather, my apologies. I'm just gonna put some spots in here. And when it dries, we'll see how well it shows up, and we can go over it with Inktense if we need to. It be hard to tell until it's dry. We can add some accents onto those once they're all dry. And now I'd like to do a peacock feather. I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry. We can dry it with a heat tool if we need to. I am going to get a fresh piece of paper for this, even though I could probably squeeze it onto that other one, but I do tend to spread out a little bit sometimes when I'm doing feathers. So I just want to make sure that I have room. And I've got this example that I did on black. So there you can see, if you want to do it on black, you can see the black version right there. I'm going to do it on white just for something different. And I'm going to start with leaf green. And I'm just going to make a nice long line. You can make this as big as or as small as you want. I think I want a nice big one. I'm going to start.
Hey, Lindsay, someone's asking if you should use different brushes for metallic work.
No, No, you can use your regular watercolor brushes. However, you may find, or like a water brush here, you may find that if you're typically used to like sables or really soft, absorbent watercolor brushes, you may prefer a water brush or a golden taklon brush like you might use for acrylics, just because it has a little more body, and it'll take a little bit more oomph to kind of push it across the paper. But it's not going to hurt your watercolor brushes because it's just watercolors. Start with one straight line with a little bit of a bend. That's a great question though. Now we're going to do a circle for the eye of the feather. And kind of like a little bit of a upside down kind of bubble heart in the center. I'm going to start just kind of making some little kind of wiggly arms off the edges. We'll be doing a class in October. Just kind of keep your eye on the Michael site for when, all about the Derwent pan paints, and we will talk about the metallics. And I think it's probably okay to share this. Later on in October, we will have this project that we'll be doing with the Inktense pan paints and the Derwent metallic pan paints. So if you're on the fence on getting these and you're just wondering if you'll have another project that you could do with them, that's going to be coming up in October as well. So it's just kind of fun. It's also fun to have those around the holidays because you can add little accents to your greeting cards, your Christmas cards, or your envelopes, or New Year's invitations, that sort of thing. This leaf green is more of an earthy, kind of like olivey color. So I like to get this part of the feather done with that just because it's a little bit drabber, and then we get a little bit brighter up towards the head of the feather. Now I'm going to take some of the sea blue, which is a beautiful turquoise color, and I'm going to color in this little heart area. And then also just kind of throw some little feather flags, maybe. I'll throw some of those up here. We'll do a lot of work with the brush. I just got to get some color established. And a little bit of fuchsia under here. And I'll mix that with a little bit of the blue to make it a little more purpley. But I want to have a little bit of vibrant transparent color to kind of contrast with our metallic opaque color. Ooh, let's get some of this too. This is a pretty color called teal green. Put some of that in here around the eye. And remember, you can go back in with your pencils if you need to define anything. Just a little bit longer up there too. Great. I'm going to go with a smaller water brush. Clean that up. It's got a lot of red in it. That's why I like to rinse in a cup, just because you can use up a lot of your water just rinsing it out. So it's a good idea. I'm going to go in with this really shimmery one here because it's a little sheer and it will mix with my color I have underneath. I'm going to squeeze it on my palette though. I want to get a little more water going and I don't want to have a blob. A couple little wisps down here. And how bumpy your paper is, the tooth of the paper can also affect how things look. It may look like a little bit more metallic if you have it on a smooth watercolor paper or cardstock because there's not that tooth. And if you have it on a rougher paper, it can look a little bit more, let's see, here's a difference here. So this is the Stonehenge here, and this is the handmade there. And you could just see how it looks almost like gold leaf on the handmade. And it looks a little bit more, pearly or metallic on the smoother paper. It's just a different texture. So it's fun to play with different papers and see what effects you like the best. I need to add more water to my brush. Once your water does start to get down to the bottom of the handle, it's a good idea to reload it. That way you won't get air bubbles when you're painting. That's why I like to have these because they're so convenient for reloading. A little sponge that keeps it from leaking in there can make air bubbles when you squeeze it. All right, I'm gonna actually need more of the Inktense color because I didn't put enough down to begin with. Actually, I think I'll go with a bigger brush. And I think I want to have actually more gold, and then I think I'll do my detail with a pencil. Purple left in that one. I really got a lot of purple on that brush. Now, before this dries, I'm going to go in and add some more. Add some more pencil. You don't need to press hard when you're going onto the wet paper. And some of that leaf green alternated around, give it an interesting variety of color. I don't know if it's showing up on camera or not, but you can see the little bits of mica particles glistening in the wash. Layers make things more interesting. So as you're working, don't be afraid to layer up more. If you're not happy with the way it's going, if it's looking a little boring or bland, you probably just need to add more layers to make it interesting. You can always touch things up with paint pens or fine liners after it's complete. Make sure it's completely dry first. That's a great way to get refinement if you need it, or just a little punch if you've kind of lost your lines. You might put a lot of paint down going for fullness and then realize, oh no, I lost my definition. Excuse me. You can get it back that way. This would be pretty to do like a, excuse me, I have to cough. This would be pretty to do a dream catcher. Just little hints of metallic and these pretty colors. I think that would look so nice. Back in with my pencils again. I don't think I can do the same feather twice. I noticed even doing the same type of feather, I just kind of go with my own, whatever I feel like that particular feather needs. But you can find all sorts of reference photos online. You could search feather silhouettes to get some ideas of just like the basic shapes, and then you can go ahead and do the color schemes that you like. I'm not putting much pressure here. I'm not even really digging in or scraping the paper. I'm just grazing. So your pencil's not going to wear down much, and you're not going to get like lines that you can't fully dissolve. So I mean, like I can go in here and soften any of those lines if I feel they're too defined. If you press really hard though, that's not going to be the case because you'll end up scraping the paper up and actually abrading it a bit. So just going really light, you have the option to keep going back in and playing with the design. If you had a larger set of Inktense, you could do some shades of purple in here if you wanted to. That would be really pretty. I'm going to go up and liquefy this area around the eye. So we're still dealing with these wispy feathers. I'm going to squeeze a little bit off on the palette, just so I can wet the brush without risking getting a big blob where I don't want it. I think I tend to work with the bigger brush more often because I like the bigger supply of water I can get with a squeeze. And the bristles will hold more water because there's more of them. But that's totally up to you, which one you prefer, which one you want to use. Let's see, where'd my sea blue go? Every color but. Oh, it's in my box. It's my fancy tomato tray. Intensify the colors. And now I'm going to liquefy. I'll go to a smaller brush for this. I'm going to liquefy this in the center.
Hey, Lindsay, someone is asking if the metallics are permanent once they are dry, and I believe they are. Correct?
I haven't.
Well, because it's not something that, like, from Derwent's perspective, it's not something we tout about it being like completely permanent the way we do the Inktense line. But I think from experience, it's not easy to lift it back off the way watercolor is, because it's just a different chemical makeup.
Oh. Well, there. I don't know. I've never tried to scrub the metallics back, so I always put it on as a last layer. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is while this is still wet, I'm going to grab the ink black or the deep indigo. Actually, I think I'll take the ink black. Just going to do the little, it's almost like even a little mini squishy heart in the center there. Just going to add a little bit of definition. And maybe just a smidgen of a center line for the barb, just to get that in there. And if you want to do any more work with the pencils, do it now while the paper is still wet, just to get that nice color payoff. And then we'll go in and add our accents with the metallics. You can let it dry to add the accents with the metallics, but since the metallics are kind of heavy, they shouldn't go crazy or run on you too badly. And I would recommend the smaller brush for this. I'm going to go in with the purple. I'm not sure if that's, there we go. I just wanted to add a little bit of water to that. And I'm going to start here. I'm going to basically got to put the purple where I've put pink. Great way to organize organize your colors, I think. Kind of build a pattern, build a formula. I like to pull brush strokes towards me. I find it's a little easier to control that way. So I like to turn my paper. Of course, you can tape it down to a cutting board or a cutting mat or a piece of foam core or something to keep it stable so it doesn't buckle while you're working, but that's up to you. These are kind of small pieces, so I usually don't bother with the small pieces like that to tape it down. And if you really get one that buckles like crazy, you can actually iron it. I put it between two pieces of copy paper with the paint side down, and I just iron it with a hot iron, dry iron. Now I'm going to go to blue. I had plenty in my mixing area, so I'll just stir that up and use that so I don't waste it. And I'm going to add some of that up here. And it's hard to see the metallic qualities while it's still wet on white paper because it just shows up more on black. So if you're doing yours on black paper, you're probably noticing as you put the metallics on, you're probably getting a real big color payout. And you probably didn't see much when you're doing Inktense because of this, the type of paint it is. So if you had a brush that actually auto-fed water, you might prefer it like here where you've got a fine brush and you're doing little details. So it's, I don't say it's a good or a bad thing. I just say it's a personal preference. I know a lot of people don't care for that, but just something to keep in mind. Oh, great. I'm going to go in with some gold, the sparkly one, the one that's really shimmery, and add that to this green area here. And I think I want a little bit of that just kind of interspersed up here a bit too, because I love that, just how it catches the light and gives you that little glittery. Some colors are more pearl and some colors are more glittery. The one thing that's interesting about the Derwent paint sets is that you could actually take out like this and you could take like 6 metallics and 6 Inktense pan paints and put them together in a small palette. If you know there's only certain colors that you like to use in a certain situation, you can make your own little, you can mix and match them and make exactly what you want. And if you have one color you use up before others, you can just buy that one color, which I also appreciate. Although I haven't used up any of my metallics.
Lindsay, someone asked if you could cut the feather out and then do like another design on the other side. And I guess it would probably depend upon like what kind of surface or like how thick your paper is, right?
Oh, I was able to cut out all of these, even the thick handmade papers. So yeah, all you would do is just draw it in reverse on the backside. That's great. It'd be great for mobiles and anything that you want to be two-sided. Sure. So I got a little too thick with that. So that happens if you get too much paint. Just try to taper it out a bit, and then we can go into the pencils and even things out. And maybe some of the pink. I think the pink would be pretty. I'm going to clean my brush off good though, because I've had some green on there and that will make mud. And you can just keep layering up colors that you like until you're happy with your design. But I think that looks really pretty. And the color part, if you're on white paper, you're going to see more of the color. If you're on black paper, you're going to see more of the shimmer. So that can help you decide what you want to choose for a particular project, or experiment with both and see what you get. So we can go back and look at our dried or fairly dry feathers here. On black, you can see how much more opaque this one is. It's fully dry, and this one over here is still kind of wet, so it's not showing up quite as well. And then over here on the white paper, these are both fairly dry, and you can start to see that gold kind of glisten showing up as it starts to dry. I don't know if you can see, it's still damp, but there's a little bit of glistening in the center. But the metallic does show up more. Like I used a lot of that same gold on this one as I did that one, and you just see much more of the reflection on the black. It's kind of like a mirror. If you put a piece of clear glass on a piece of black paper, it'll almost look like a mirror. And you put a piece of clear glass on a piece of white paper and you don't get that same reflection. You'll get some, but not as much as on the black. And that's the same with your metallic paints. So to finish these up, I'll go with these because these are a little bit drier. Well, all you need to do is just go in, and I try to kind of loose cut them out first. And I would highly recommend letting them dry fully, because when your paper is wet, it's a little soft and it can be hard to cut. But for time's sake, I'll just kind of show you how I go about cutting these, because I cut these by hand. I do have an electronic die cutter that will cut around things, but something like this, it's so thick. I definitely cut them by hand. And I just leave about an 16th of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch border, and just cut around it like that. And that's all there is to it. And once you have a pile of them, you can punch holes in them, hang them from a branch. You could use them as bookmarks. You could laminate them if you wanted to, and then cut around the lamination. It's, completely up to you. But it's a fun way to try out some new paints. Maybe you're trying out a set of watercolors. You might just paint a feather shape with the water on the white watercolor paper, and then drip in your colors and see how much they flow and see what colors mix together and what you get. Or you might pick up one color like a yellow, and you paint a yellow feather and then drip in some blue and some red and see how those colors look together and mix together. So it's a really great kind of creativity, or I guess I should say lack of creativity buster. If you find yourself wanting to make something but you just don't know what, it's a great way to just start, basically. And it's a little more interesting than just swatching. So once you have your dry feather, you may decide that you want to add some accents. So you can go in with your brush, you can pick up some opaque. So you want to go for contrast. So since this is transparent, a lot of transparent Inktense on white paper, if I go with a really opaque silver, I can add little dots and that will show up over the dark transparent color. Or I could go with a darker color, and that would show up like the black Inktense. Like I'll show you a little idea in a second here, and we'll get a few of those on there. So if I wanted to go in the opposite direction and go dark, I could take my black and I would just dip it in a little water, just the lead, not the wood. And then I could just kind of like, I could draw around those. Actually, I feel a foolproof way to do it is just to pick up the color from your palette, because then it won't be too deep. And so then I'll have a nice contrast that way too. So just another way you can finish it off. But the key takeaway that I'd like you to leave with today is to play with your supplies, experiment, see what the colors do, see what the paint does, get used to them. Don't feel like every single thing you make has to be a masterpiece. there's no wasting of the materials. The only waste of your materials is if they sit on the shelf and never get used. That's the only real waste. You can make, you could on one of those small sheets of white watercolor paper, you could probably do 4 or 5 feathers. On one of those 9 by 12 sheets, you could probably get a dozen feathers drawn and cut out. So, it's really fun, and you're not using a lot of materials. And look how cute that is. I mean, that'd be a cute little bookmark, um a cute little dangly from for a mobile. I mean, just play with your different papers and your paints and see what you can come up with. I'm sure you have a bunch of different supplies hanging around that you would like to experiment with, and I think that it's a great way to get to know your materials and yeah, have some fun with some paint. Do we have any more questions before we go?
Someone asked if there's any cautions when not to use the metallic.
Not that I know of. I would recommend that you don't spray apply for a couple of reasons. Generally I might have, you know what? I think I do actually have I have my box here. Let me look at my box and see if there's any. I don't think there are, though. I don't think there's a cautionary label on these. Generally, if there was going to be some sort of issue, because all of Derwent's products have gone through the ASTM and safety checking. So there would be, let's see.
Yeah, I can confirm there's no safety issues from that standpoint that's not covered off. And
Okay,
so
great. Oh, this is what it looks like when if you're at Michael's and you want to find the product. It's got a little metallic fish on there, which is another fun. You could do fish just like you did feathers. That would be another really fun exercise to try. The only thing I would say don't do with the metallic paints is I wouldn't use it in like a fountain pen. I wouldn't like dissolve it down, try to put it in a fountain pen. You could use it with a dip pen, but not a fountain pen. But I would clean, if it's a metal dip pen, I'd clean it good just in case there's any sort of reaction. I think it's all mica based, but if there was any metal in there could be some interaction. And I would say do not put it in an airbrush, because I think it could damage your airbrush because of all those little mica particles could clog or damage things. But safety wise, I don't think you would have too much of a problem. I probably wouldn't use it for paint on your skin, because it's not a cosmetic product. But any sort of art application, using it in a normal art manner, I don't think you're going to have any issues. And it's really fun for kids because you can add those fancy shimmery touches, and kids absolutely love that. And plus, being able to punch holes in all these and make little dangle them from a branch, I mean, what a pretty decoration. I think if I was a school teacher, that would be a project I would do in my class. I'd give everybody a sheet of white and black paper and have them just make feathers and just decorate the whole room. I think it would be gorgeous. Do we have any other questions, Molly?
someone just asked if you would post this project on your Pinterest.
Oh, yeah, sure, I can. I kind of forgot about Pinterest. Yeah, I totally can post that.
And then wondering where they should dispose the rinse water after using metallics. I think you can just dispose of it just like you would any other watercolor water. There's nothing special about the metallics that need special treatment. So
yeah, I just put them right down the sink. You may find that I mean, if you want to be really, really frugal, like say you're using the water brushes and you don't want to waste an ounce of that sparkly goodness, you could have a little tiny jar where you rinse your water brush out instead of using a paper towel, and you could let it evaporate, and you could actually use that mica for something else if you wanted to, if you want to be super frugal. But I just dump it down the sink. I haven't had any sort of issues with that. There's nothing toxic in it. So, and I'm pretty careful. I mean, I have a private well and septic because I'm out in the country. But it shouldn't give you any issues. If you're outdoors, you're painting in plein air and you have a water bucket, just anytime I'm outside painting, I look for a pile of rocks or gravel to dump my rinse water in, just because I know it's going to filter down through there. I'm not contaminating any sort of foliage or anything like that that an animal might eat. But I mean, it's benign stuff. It's pretty healthy to use.
Yep.
That's it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to thank Derwent and Michaels for having me. And it was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys all had a great time. And if you make this project, feel free to tag me on Instagram. I'm at Lindsay Wyrick. Make sure you tag Derwent Art _US or Derwent Art Official, and they can see your work as well. And use the hashtag Make It with Michaels so they can see what you've been up to as well, because it's always fun to see what everybody creates after these classes. And I guess that's it. On behalf of Hinema from Michaels and Molly from Derwent, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy crafting. Bye.